How many times have you been voluntold to do something in your teaching career? My best guess is way too many times. Hello historians, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to support you by sharing some tools that you can use to enforce healthy boundaries at work. Now, teaching is one of the most emotionally rewarding professions you'll ever have, but over time, if we continue to allow our boundaries to be broken, we start feeling a little resentful toward our profession, and that really sucks because it starts tainting even the good parts of teaching. So if this is something that you feel you would like more support with, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe so that I know that you're interested in more content on this topic. If you're new to this channel, I'm Cecilia Tamez, and I'm your history teacher mentor, and I'm here to make sure that you feel confident and effective as you facilitate learning in your classroom. Okay, y'all, so here's the game plan. In this video, we are going to explore why you are targeted as a volunteer, because believe it or not, there is some science behind this. 2, we're going to see why we as teachers have such a hard time saying no, and also the sneaky ways that the system perpetuates this expectation. And finally, I will be modeling some responses that you can use to take back your power and enforce your boundaries in a professional and classy way. Now, disclaimer, this is not legal advice. This is merely just based on my own experiences and observations. Also, you know I'm coming in clutch with those timestamps, which you can conveniently find below. Okay, so let's talk about you as a target and your boundaries. Why you? I'm gonna give it to you straight. In this career, you cannot be an overgiver. The only people you should ever consider possibly overgiving to are your students. And even then, when your students love you and they respect you, even they will respect your boundaries. So let's talk about your boundaries. So first of all, do you have any boundaries? Boundaries are that little feeling that make you say, oh, no. Sometimes that feeling is just a whisper to you because maybe you're a new teacher. Maybe people think of you as a nice person and you don't really want to corrupt that image. You maybe have a new boss, or you have unresolved personal trauma that makes you feel like if you say no, it'll rupture the relationship. However, by not defining your personal boundaries, you're less likely to be able to enforce them. So first, you need to get clear on what drains you, what you're willing and not willing to do, and what you personally value. Now, another reason why you may be struggling to enforce healthy boundaries as a teacher is if you're new. I'll be honest, one of the reasons why new teachers are such attractive candidates is because, according to most employers, they can be molded. New teachers are usually seen as hungry to succeed, full of energy, growth mindset. The downside, unfortunately, is that you may be unfamiliar with the policies, the laws, the regulations, and the protections that you have as an educator, which makes you, and has made us, other educators in the past, easy targets for having our boundaries broken. Now, the third reason why your boundaries are constantly being tested at work is if you're willing. Because if you're not saying no, then you are being labeled as a yes person. Now, this isn't always a bad thing, okay? I personally have said time and time again, education is a team sport. We are not fulfilling our duties as teachers by trying to be solo superstars. Everyone that works in a school setting has to work together, collaborate, help each other, sometimes pick up the slack, do that little extra. And honestly, I think that's true for any job. However, going back to what we said earlier, there has to be an equitable sharing of responsibilities. And when you're not clear on your boundaries, you may end up pulling more than your fair share of the weight. And that could be a recipe for burnout. The next reason why you may be struggling to enforce your boundaries as a teacher is if you're trying to prove yourself. People please. Now, a person who has the tendency to people please will also have a challenging time setting boundaries. Now, this all goes back to not saying no, even occasionally, even if it's just to flex and practice our boundary muscles. If our achievements were not acknowledged as children, or our grown-ups demanded success as their condition for loving us, then we may have unconsciously carried this feeling of unworthiness into our adulthood and our professional life. And this perpetuates that feeling of not feeling good enough unless we're saying yes to everything and meeting every single expectation. Now, on a final note, boundaries are not rules that you create for yourself. It's not you choosing not to help your colleagues, your boss, your students, your school. Boundaries are rules that you have based on your needs for how and when people can access your personal time and your energy, because those are two things that you can never get back. If you've had challenges enforcing your boundaries, I want to share a quick perspective shift with you. People that set rules about how and when they share their time and energy come off as more authentic people. Because when you say no and you are setting limits to how you share your time and energy, you are creating resistance. You are showing that you have standards. You're showing you're a valuable person and that your time matters. I know it sounds really ironic, but ironically enough, boundaries actually make us more likable and respected by others. So keep that in mind next time you feel you're being pressured into saying yes to something that your heart is just not into. Now, if this is making sense to you and if you're connecting with what I'm saying, be sure to comment break time down in the comments below so that I know you're committed to enforcing your boundaries and are ready to learn what to say when faced with enforcing them. But before we get into that, let's look at why it's so hard to say no and set healthy boundaries when working in education. So number one, we work in a profession where we have a contract salary. What does this mean? This means that the education system is communicating their expectation, and not only that, it's also heavily dependent on our free labor should we choose to invest additional time at our own expense. The second reason why it's so challenging to enforce our boundaries as teachers is because we love our students. We would do anything for those kids, and we do, but an unhappy, overworked, burnt out teacher cannot show up as their best for their students. So remember this, and I always used to say this: happy teacher, happy students. If you love your students, you will enforce your boundaries confidently and fearlessly for their sake and yours. And finally, it is hard to enforce our boundaries as teachers because we genuinely love what we do. We believe that it's worth working unpaid hours if it'll help our students have a better outlook on life, school, or their future. We believe that creating a special learning experience at school takes time and effort and energy, and we're willing to do the work because we believe in our mission. This is what distinguishes our profession from other professions that do get paid at an hourly rate and overtime. We also have to be kind to ourselves. Now, y'all may not know this, but I'm a huge Charlton Heston fan. And in his film, The 10 Commandments, there's a line in the movie that I think perfectly captures this fixation and prevalent attitude of self-sacrifice among educators.
A city is built of brick, Pharaoh. The strong make many, the starving make few. The dead make none.
If our mission is to create a strong legacy for our students, for ourselves as teachers, as life changers, then we need to be strong. We need recovery time. We need boundaries. So let's learn how we can be strong by advocating for our boundaries. Unfortunately, I have prior engagements and was not notified prior. Now, a response like this will help you enforce your boundaries by expressing the idea that you cannot be assigned something without being consulted first. You are in charge of your time. Actually, as this is after contract hours, I can't commit to blank. My wellness is my top priority, and I want to make sure that I show up as my best for my students. This particular response will help you enforce healthy boundaries as a teacher because you're communicating that your time outside of school is limited and reserved for your wellness. Since this is outside of my contract hours, what would be the compensation for blank? Now, a remark like this will help you enforce your boundaries because you're communicating that if it's outside your contract hours, you expect and want to know how much you'll be paid. And to be frank, it's not even about the pay. It's about communicating the value of your time. Actually, I'll only be available to help from this time to this time. Now, I said it before, teaching is a team sport. So if you find that you do want to volunteer, but you want to make sure that this does not label you as I have no boundaries, then this response helps you communicate that if you are volunteering for something, you set your availability and how you're willing to help. Okay, y'all. Those of you that follow me on my Instagram page, you know that I really listen to and like to get feedback from our history teacher community. And there were two responses that I just received that I think I need to include in this video because they are very relevant and they also pertain to boundaries. And that is, what do we do when and if we are being asked to do or teach something that is against our better judgment, or maybe omit something that is against our better judgment, our professional values, or violates our boundaries in some way. So here's my response to that. It's very, very important, and this goes along with the drama of being a new teacher, but it is so important that you do your homework. If you're being told that you have to comply with something, and again, please, this is not legal advice, okay? This is just what I would do given this circumstance, but because it's being claimed as mandatory, then I would do my due diligence and find out for a fact. I would call my teacher organization to confirm that. I would look up the statute or whatever information will let me know whether or not this is actually part of my teacher obligation, whether I would be violating my teacher contract by not fulfilling this duty. Now, the second thing I was asked about is what do we do if we're being assigned a role or responsibility that really stretches us thin, that we didn't volunteer for and that we were just assigned to? You need to have a conversation or send an email saying, I appreciate this honor, or I appreciate this opportunity, or thank you for considering me for the role of blah, blah, blah. And, I'm very grateful that you would entrust me with this task, but I also do realize that it is a huge responsibility. You need to communicate that this is going to overstretch you, that you don't have the emotional, physical, mental bandwidth to take on a responsibility that involves extra time or working after hours or volunteering without compensation or even with compensation, okay? The money doesn't make a difference. It is the value of you having ownership of your time and your energy and you getting to choose what you do with that. Now, if you found this video helpful, let me know by commenting break time so that I know you found value in this video and would like continued support with creating boundaries as an educator. For additional resources and support, don't forget, I'm just a click away at www.thegameplaneduSolutions.com. And I'll go ahead and link that in the description down below. As always, I want your success. I'm rooting for you. Until next time, class dismissed.